Spice is a little bit more aggressive. So
she gets along with me great.
So funny story that Spice, I went to feed them one night when they were in my office, and I told Terina that I was never touching these things. I wanted nothing to do with them. They were her pets. And so one night, I was going to get their water and their food bowls, and I was going to fill them up. And at this point, they were in my office. And so I had a recliner in my office, and as soon as I opened the door, they both came out of their little sack, and they started jumping around, and they jumped out. Spice jumps out onto my recliner where it's sitting right there next to it. And then so I'm like, because she's kind of freaking out. She doesn't really know where she's at. This was very new to her. And so Spice, I go to pick her up, and as I go to pick her up, she jumps right on my chest. And so I'm kind of freaking out, she's like spazzing out. She's on my chest, and then she jumps back on the recliner. Well, I go to reach and get her again, and she jumps in my face and scratches my lip up, and she didn't bite me or anything, and she didn't mean to hurt me. She was just kind of freaking out because it was a new environment for her. And so I finally get a hold of her and I get her back in her cage. But yeah, so Terina comes home and I got scratches all on my face. And I have henceforth not cleaned or touched them since, because I'm just not dealing with that. That's
okay. I tend to go down there at night and harass them, but they're good with me. They don't bite me. They don't scratch me. But I also always come with long sleeve shirts on, or I put a hoodie on, because their little claws do irritate my skin. Mm-hmm. So I have that on.
Well, even with shirts on, if you let them run around on you, they'll scratch you up because of their little claws.
But they will also pee and poop on you, and that's nasty.
Uh-huh. All right, so hold up. Well, before we end this, we're getting close. I told you I want to stay around 30 to 45 minutes. So before we end this, I'm going to go to each of y'all and give me a pet that you would want to possibly have when you are grown and out of my house is the key word. Okay. Grown and out of my house. Bye-bye. You can name two. I don't care. But just give me an example. So this time we're going to start with Layla. Yes. Layla. So what pet would you want if you were out of my house?
Well, I would like a munchkin.
A what?
Munchkin.
A munchkin is a cat.
It's so adorable.
It's so cute.
So the little munchkin smushed face
and
cats.
little bitty legs, their legs are half the size, and they're tiny. They're
little snotty faces pushed in.
Well, and
okay, so what would you name your munchkin cat?
Yoda.
That's how I name it Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda.
All right. So now we're gonna what? What were you gonna say?
I was gonna name him, and I have 3 more.
No, just one. I just wanted one.
Okay.
Well, what were you gonna name it?
I would name him Snowball.
Snowball would be a good name.
Boop Noodle.
All right, Kaylee. So what do you got, Kaylee? What would be your pet?
Mine would be a red husky.
A red husky.
Yeah, a red husky.
Why? Because of ISIS.
That and because I think they're really pretty.
Well, they are. They were my favorite dogs. Huskies are my favorite dogs, just because their personality. They are really pretty, but me and your mama learned that they are very hairy.
Hairy. Did she talk about? But what I would name him?
What would you name your red husky?
I'd probably name him Red.
Red
if it was a boy. If it was girl, Crimson.
What about
Oh, I like Crimson.
I love
Crimson would be a good name. Crimson. What about Mars or
Jupiter
or Rover?
Rover.
Mars Rover.
I named them after.
You can name
space.
it Mars Rover.
Yeah, Mars Rover. Let's go, Mars Rover. Come here.
Okay.
I have your bone.
All right, Mia. We already know what you're gonna say. So what do you got?
Because she doesn't want her
No,
mother
just
visiting.
one. I just want one, and what you would name it.
She wants a
I've always really wanted a German Shepherd.
A German Shepherd?
A German Shepherd.
Okay, so why a German Shepherd?
I've always just thought of them as really smart and pretty dogs, even though a lot of people don't think they're pretty. And then
they are. They're very wolf-like dogs, especially the black ones.
I really want a black German Shepherd, and
What would you name
it? Loyal dogs, and I really don't have a name picked out, but I wanted to name it Max or Neon or.
What about Midnight?
No,
Midnight.
That's such a common name.
Eclipse, Luna,
online. And then,
Luna would be a good one. I like Luna.
And then I like the name Nuka.
Nuka?
Like nuclear. No, nuclear combat weapon.
No, why Nuka? What is Nuka?
It's just it's always like been a name I really liked. If I had a pet, I would name it Nuka because I just like the name.
Okay. All right, Mommy. If you had one pet when you were growing up, what would yours have been?
It would have been Sandy, our child. We loved Sandy.
Well, you had that.
Yeah, that's not. I wouldn't want another one.
You want another one?
I would have liked for her to live longer than what she did.
Chows were really... Chows kind of scared me because they were so aggressive.
They're very protective.
And then their purple tongues are
They had purple tongues?
Yeah, so chows have purple tongues. It's very odd.
If you ever see someone that say, "Oh, this is a chow," you want to see their tongue.
Look at their tongue.
Yeah,
the
tongue.
Purple. And Chris, so my best friend Chris growing up. So Chris, I don't think, have I ever talked about Chris to you?
No.
So Chris lived about 4 or 5 houses up from me when we lived down Lock 4 here in Gallatin. And Chris had 2 chows. He had 2 growing up. And they used to shave them down every summer. They looked so funny because they would have these big fluffy, mane-looking faces. And then they would shave their bodies down, and they just have the poofball tail. But they had the purple tongue. Yeah, they would shave them like poodles, but they're so fluffy, you don't want to shave them like that. But they were probably really hot in the summertime. So.
Ow! She bit my foot.
All right, we'll stop playing with her.
I wasn't playing with her.
What do you need, Layla? What do you want to say?
I want to tell you something about Isis.
What about Isis?
Well, when we had him,
her,
somebody put a rubber band on his foot.
That was tight.
Our
Cocker Spaniel.
All right, that since we've mentioned her a couple of times, I will say the name ISIS for everyone was not meant as the terrorist group. We did not name our dog after the terrorist group. We named her. Me and your mother are very we like the Egyptian culture, and Isis was a name I came up with because that was an Egyptian princess.
Oh.
And so that's where I came up with that name.
Isis.
But we did not name the dog, just so everybody knows. We did not name.
Let's go terrorize.
She was a goddess, yes, not a princess. Isis was a goddess in Egyptian theology.
Yes, and it worked because she also had ice blue eyes.
Yes.
Both of her eyes were blue.
Yeah. So we didn't name her after the terrorist group, just so we clear that up. And so,
but our dog right now, Harley Quinn.
I'm Terina.
You interrupted her.
No, she can finish what she's saying. What are you doing? You were trying to end the show.
Because I was supposed to cook dinner, but now she got to go get ready for cheer.
Sign off.
I know.
All right, I'm Terina.
What?
I'm Jimmy.
I'm Layla.
I'm Casey.
She got interrupted.
And I'm Bella.
And we're
Loud
for no reason.
And
I thought we were going to say Curtis Clan.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Billy wants to say something.
All right, so again, that is it for tonight's show. There will be preceding shows following this. Me and Mrs. Curtis will plan on sitting down. We just probably go out and do some of these topics that we've written down that the girls have come up with. I need one thing. We need to discuss Yu-Gi-Oh cards because I have no idea.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
My bad.
Oh my god!
All right.
I
Well,
still
we'll
have
sit down and talk
need to
about
go
those.
eat it.
I do plan on doing also a couple of shows with each one of my girls. I'll sit down and do one-on-ones.
Like ask questions.
We'll do same thing. Like we'll do topics and we'll do the same thing. So, but that is it again for tonight. If you downloaded this podcast, we really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting us. And again, we are loud for no reason. And that is it. Thank you very much and have a good night.